Hi everyone. Um, my first part, my first 5-6 minute video was about Genesis. We are talking about the Holy Bible, and I am now at Exodus. Something that I wanted to kind of touch up on. This is my dog. She insists on being here. Something that I wanted to touch up on, and something that is kind of a touchy subject, I know with a lot of Catholics and Christians, is the fact that God demands blood sacrifices in the Holy Bible. I honestly think that unlike demons who need death and blood sacrifices for their own sick pleasure, but also to live, I think God simply needs to know that we are willing to do anything for him. Anything. Just like in Genesis 22, God tested Abraham's faith by asking him to kill his very own son, his only son. I'm not gonna lie, this part kind of made me cringe a little bit, but you know what? Fortunately, like most tales, God comes through and does the right thing. Before Abraham kills his son, an angel comes down from heaven and stops him. The angel says, "Do not lay a hand on the boy. Do not hurt him in any way. For now I know that you truly fear God. You have not held me, even your son, your only son." Then he sacrifices the ram instead, because that's just what they were used to doing back in the day. So I think God does not, in fact, want blood, but he wants your loyalty and love. As we say, John 5:19, we are from the world, but not of the world. And we know that we are of God, and the whole world lieth in wickedness. Something that I admired was in Genesis 4:9. Jacob, which is the grandson of Abraham, is on his deathbed. But before he goes, his last words to his sons are very interesting, to say the least. He blesses all 12 of them, and they actually became the 12 tribes of Israel. And he was also seemed to be telling each one of their futures. Example, one of his sons, Benjamin, he called him a ravenous wolf who destroys everything in his path, and he will continue to do so in his lifetime. He's a devourer, a conqueror. Asher, he will simply grow food, and he will dine with the rich. And he went through all his sons and told them all the things that will happen in their future. And I thought that was pretty interesting. So let's get into Exodus, which is also written by Moses. I would say that Exodus describes Israel's national history, recording the earliest years of the nation and God's covenant with them. The Israelites' delivery from slavery and from Egypt. And this is why we celebrate Passover. Jacob had 70 descendants in Egypt, including Joseph, who we know had been sold by his brothers and forgiven for it into slavery. This shows that Joseph is from God and his plan. He's so forgiving. This was in Genesis, not Exodus. After this, the Israelites filled the land. God's people became very powerful. The Egyptians, forgetting from years ago about Joseph, oppressed the Israelites because they were more plentiful than the Egyptians, because they had more of God's blessing, right? And the Egyptians made them slaves. The Pharaoh tried to have the newborn baby boys killed, but the fear of God kept them alive, because no midwife would kill for the Pharaoh, because they were more afraid of God than they were of the Pharaoh. This is when Moses was born, actually, and found in the reeds of the Nile River. He was abandoned by his mother. Later on, becoming adopted by an Egyptian princess. Moses grew up with the Israelites as slaves and pitied his people. He even killed an Egyptian slave master one day because of how cruel he was. The next day, the Egyptians discovered the body in the sand, told the Pharaoh, and the king wanted him dead. Luckily, Moses escaped to Midian. It's like a small village. He found a priest, the priest of the village, and wed his daughter and had his own family. So this worked out pretty well. Later on in his life is when he encountered the Lord through the burning bush and receives the message about the oppression of God's people in Egypt. God's request, his people be saved and taken out of Egypt to go to a new land where they are free and they can live and worship God, Yahweh, their God, not the Egyptian gods. Unfortunately, it did take a little convincing on God's end. And then he proceeds to demonstrate his power by turning Moses' staff into a snake. So God is actually having a really hard time convincing Moses to go on this mission. He needs some convincing. Unfortunately, again, for like the fourth time, Moses pleads with God to choose someone else for this task. And this really angers God at this point, because like I said, it's like the fourth time he says, no, please no. Heck, even I was angry with Moses at this point. Moses explains that he is not good with his words, but God tells him he's not alone in this endeavor. He doesn't have to be. And to bring his brother Aaron, who will be his mouthpiece, along with his shepherd's staff that can create miracles. God's staff now. So bear in mind, 2 people, 2 men performing miracles, and are going to lead the people from Egypt back to the promised land to rever God once again. And yes, that will be all I have for today. If you have any suggestions on how I can do things differently, I'm sorry if my language is, if I stutter and such. English is not my first language. I apologize. But yes, we will continue with Exodus another time. Have a good day.